أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Here's a nice graphic. I'm just going to read through the graphic. It says, accordingly, there's some research that's done in psychology, and the diagram is not entirely made by Erikson, but there is some later psychologists who looked at Eriksons theories and seek to offer their own revision of it. That means they look at different stages in humanity as we go through growth and development, normal, natural growth and development, and where we obtain certain characteristic tendencies. And they oversimplify and generalize just to understand that these are patterns and trends based on research over a long period of time. So this figure states that at maturity, when we become anywhere above a certain age, when our youth and vigor has started to diminish, we're looking for integrity, and we're developing those characteristics of integrity, or we're developing certain characteristics of despair and disgust. The previous stage in life is adulthood, where we are at our greatest vigor and health. That is called generativity versus stagnation, which means creating a family, having intimate relations, or feeling accomplished in what a life path was chosen. The previous stage is young adulthood, and that is intimacy versus isolation. Those are our youthful, idealistic planning phase of our life, and usually it's based on that. And then there's teenage years, and they call it here puberty and adolescence, and that is where identity versus role diffusion is a big part of human experience. So either identity is set, or a type of diffusion of identity begins to manifest for whatever reason. The previous to puberty and adolescence is latency, and that is really where early development of industry versus inferiority. And industry may be a kind of culturally loaded term, but it just means that a young person is going to want to feel accomplished in what they choose or what their parents identify or family and loved ones identify as accomplished, versus feeling what they call inferiority complex can be developed at that phase, or they can feel confident in the choices and abilities at that phase. Locomotor and genital, this is initiative versus guilt. So this is where you're still learning to function physically. So they can feel guilty about how they function as a healthy, strong person, or they can feel guilty about it. Previous to that is muscular and anal, oral and sensory. Oral sensory is really where they're doing rada, or they're nursing. And many times, if they have a smooth pregnancy, smooth birth, smooth nursing habits, loving family, sleeping, things like that, will gain greater trust, versus where they can typically gain some type of mistrust at that phase. And like I said, muscular anal just means where their bodily functions are being developed. They can learn to gain autonomy, or they can begin to feel a sense of shame or doubt if it is not something that parents or loved ones get involved in. Again, this is Erikson's 8 stages of humanity, people. And some of this may apply to creatures as well, that outside of humanity. But this is a nice way to think about different phases in life and what type of characteristics, qualities are being nurtured or natured into existence. Again, I'll read a section of this. It says, in order to indicate the whole conceptual area which is awaiting systematic treatment, I shall conclude this chapter with a diagram. In this, as in the diagram of the pre-genitalia zones and modes, a diagonal represents the sequence of enduring solutions each of which is based on the integration of earlier ones. At any stage of life, the cycle of solution is one conflict that adds to a new ego quality, a new criterion increasing the strengths. The criteria proposed in this chart are to be treated in analog to the criteria for health and or illness in general, by ascertaining whether or not there is a pervading subjective sense of the criterion in question, and whether or not the objective evidence of dominance of the criterion can be established by indirect examination by means of in-depth psychology. Above the diagonal, there is space for future elaboration of the precursors for each of these solutions, all of which are at the beginning. Below the diagonal, there is space for designation of derivatives of these solutions and maturing and developing mutual personalities. That means they're giving room for hues or a color wheel type thing where there's gradients or a spectrum of trust and mistrust. There's a spectrum of autonomy, shame, and doubt. There's a range of initiative versus guilt behaviors, and the conglomerate of feelings is really what that equation might end up being. To be a part of developing a mature, loving personality, or to find that these things are stagnating or developing things that the person and others around them do not view as a solution or worthy of their personality or nice, or however we want to define those plans and phases of people's life. So many people are successful, and this is not a dictate again. This is a counseling tool that has been used to strengthen people's ability to gain confidence, to recover from trauma or despair or worries or grief. And these are a way to create a type of lifestyle that is healthier and that is free from perceived or real difficulties in life. Assalamu alaikum.